mentioned earlier that we've got a crisis of perception, a crisis of values. And I think the questions for design are, we have to reconceive how we benefit society. How do we design for life satisfaction that Andrew was talking about before? And these are very big questions, fundamental questions for design, that we as a profession, as a group of educators, I don't think have really got to grips with. We work very much within the system, and we now need to be very much part of challenging that system. And I've called the talk Nurturing Ecological Habits of Mind in Design. Nurturing suggests that we have time to nurture, to bring to life the meaning of what ecological habits of mind is. Old ideas which surround us all the time. And design, of course, informs the structure, the infrastructure, the material stuff of our life. And if every time we look around us and wear clothes and we're reminded of the old way of thinking, it's terribly hard to evoke what that new way of thinking should be and how it should become into practice in the decisions we make as designers. I'm using the words of Stephen Sterling here. He's an educator who's very much been focusing on sustainable education for a number of years, and he talks about this new way of thinking, this need for, as Jodie said earlier, a systemic wisdom. And he said that we need to be moving away from the things that are in brackets here, problem solving, analysis, reductionism, etc., to the left hand side here, reframing. Some solutions just produce problems. We need to be thinking of solutions that generate more solutions, that generate different questions. Synthesis. We often need to look at the whole and at the larger context, and not just about analysing the parts of the system. We need to be holistic. Complex systems show emergent properties, and those are qualities that arise from the interaction of those parts. If we focus only on analysing those parts, as designers, we only ever will come to a solution for that part and not for the whole context. We need to look at multiple causes and effects, feedback loops, knock-on issues. How do we do that if we only ever look at one thing within a system? We need to be integrative. Most issues and events have a relationship and are caused by other issues and events, and therefore we need to understand those relationships. We need to extend our boundaries of thinking beyond the narrow boundaries of our normal disciplines, perhaps, to other boundaries, to other ways, to have a different view, a bigger view of the world that we have to work within. Total objectivity is impossible, so it's much better to think about subjective self and how our subjective self is involved in the perception and interpretation of the world. So we should work towards critical subjectivity rather than trying to be objective about everything. We need to stop seeing so-called opposites as such, and we need to see them in relationships. So we need to see economy and ecology. We need to see people and nature, facts and values. All these things need to be entwined within our dialogues, within our work of designers, and not seen as either or. We need to think that intellect needs to be balanced with intuition, rationality with non-rational ways of thinking. And in most human and natural systems, it is impossible to predict the outcomes. So we need to be more flexible, accept uncertainty and ambiguity, and not try and control everything, participate and learn from change. So that's a very big ask, if you like, to move, say, from the current way of thinking, which predominates not only societal thinking, but obviously thinking within educational establishments, to a new, more systemic way of thinking, a new systemic wisdom, which needs to be incorporated within design. So where we are focusing on incorporating environmental issues in design at the moment, we tend to do it within the boundaries and the familiarity, if you like, of the design discipline. We are secure within the boundaries. We know what design does, what design's role is in society, who it serves, particularly markets, and that message is continually thrust before us as design students by design educators, because that is where the jobs are, that's what the profession does, those are the signals models that are portrayed for us to learn from. So it's very hard perhaps to suggest other ways, but that is what we need to do. So at the moment we see sustainability as being pushed within design. We don't challenge what design does, we just try to make it a little bit better. We try to make a more eco-efficient kettle, or a bag made out of recycled plastic, or a bag that's going to last a bit longer. But we're not questioning the need for a kettle, we're not questioning the need for a bag. We're still suggesting that these things need to be bought in huge numbers, we need to produce more and more stuff, but it's just more ecologically sound. And that's better than doing nothing at all, of course it is. But it's not sufficient to address the crisis of perception and crisis of values that face us now in our time today, and the crisis that is looming ahead. Sorry to be dismal, but it's true. Design, if we want to play a part in the future, in future solutions, has to be a bit more radical. We have to see design as being within sustainability, a component part of sustainability, being able to see the rich connections and relationships that would emerge from placing design in that context. So we're no longer confined by what we think design is. We actually have an open remit for what design can do. Maybe design can also design infrastructure and governance policy, as well as designing shoes. You know, maybe the processes involved in design can scale, and they need to scale in order for new creative opportunities to arise around ecological limits. And Stephen Sterling would describe our eco-design model, if you like, as a content and skills emphasis. So we're giving you information about different materials and different energy values, and different ideas about maybe how you can look at consumer behaviour and the way they use energy in products. All good stuff, but it's a maintenance response. It's fitting within the existing system. We don't have to challenge what education is about. We need to move more towards a capacity building and action emphasis, according to Stephen, and it's about transforming a transformative response and enactment, about living and an experimental curriculum, which will include holistic approaches to knowledge, understanding the importance of context and not just focusing on outcomes. It's future oriented, it's about real world issues, it's about action research, about embracing experiential learning, it's about local and global citizenship, ethical and ecological sensibilities. And I think design, of all the disciplines out here in education, design is so well placed to take this on board. We already look at real world issues, we already do a lot of action research, we are future oriented, we're very good at bringing lots of discipline knowledge together. We just need to do it within the context of ecological limits. We need to understand what that means for designers. We need to make a case for where our profession belongs on the future landscape of change, and I think it has an opportunity to be a very powerful agent of change. But we have to choose the right path, and John Ehrenfeld, who is, I suppose, was the founder of the International Industrial Ecology movement and is now an emeritus professor of MIT, talks about these two views of approaching sustainability, if you like. The first is unsustainability, and he says the emphasis here is on reducing the environmental and social impacts of what we do today. So that's probably where good practice is now. It's about still doing what we're doing, but we're just making it a bit more ecological and socially better. We're not challenging the big issues that need to be challenged. The other option, the sort of new way of thinking, is about creating sustainability. The emphasis on rethinking our goals, envisioning different futures and ways of getting there. And this, of course, is a much more difficult path. And I think the resilience of design and the profession of design and the stuff produced as a result of design will be very much influenced, its longevity will be influenced by the path we choose to take.